Question number 3.
Sure.
Well, they take better care of themselves.
So, class.
I'm Miss Jason.
I used to work there.
Oh, really?
That's right, city.
Oh,
I worked for this, program called, Alfred Friendly Fellowship.
oh,
Whenever you want.
that's where I do a lot right
Wait
now.
till 6.
Number 3 will be Melinda.
Some exciting, this week, choice of-
Both. I'm on this team, and they offered someone to cover all the candidate forums, so we went to the Mark Barnon one, to the Muse one.
Did you go to the, what's that restaurant?
I think that one got posted. I think it's. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
What was your?
Lisa Schwartz. See what you go see. Yeah, I'll go back.
It'll go from. I'll have.
Yeah, we need to be at least next week. Peter, all the readers need to come up and say close to this mic.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you're reading a question, please stand close to this mic. Please come forward, read your question.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to the candidate forum for 2026. And we're really pleased today that the 1st and 5th ward candidates are here. And we'll start just welcoming them. The first is Valerie Carroll from the 1st ward, who's unopposed this year. And then the next candidate is Christina Hartman. And she is running for the first time for the 5th ward. And then the next candidate is Don Waterman, and he's been serving for several terms for the 5th ward. Oh, just one?
Yeah, this is the end of my first term.
Oh, okay. Just.
Might seem like long,
Yeah.
but this is the end of my.
And so this forum is sponsored by the Mid-Missouri Sierra Club, Renew Missouri, and Peaceworks, Mid-Missouri Peaceworks. And it will be a focus on environmental issues. The candidates have had the questions in advance for time to think about them. And today we have different people from the audience that will come up and ask the question so the viewers and the candidates can hear them again and respond. And we have different time limits for each of the questions. Anything else you would like to add? Oh, I'm moderator Barbara Hoppy, and this is.
My name is Kim Dill.
Could you guys speak into your mics for a close meeting?
So to start then, we'll have the first question, and it will be John Conway will come up and ask that.
Thank you, Barbara.
Oh, and each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond.
Who's our timekeeper?
We have a timekeeper in the audience. I could do it. Would you like to move up to the front row so we could see you? Thank you. Would you wave at us when there's time?
And good evening and thanks for coming. The Sikeston plant may close by 2029 or 2030. Do you support replacing the Sikeston electricity contract with contracts for renewable energy and potentially some battery storage? Would you support updating Columbia's renewable energy standard to include a goal for Columbia Water and Light to obtain 100% of its electricity from renewable sources by a future date? If so, by what date? Would you support intermediate goals? And if so, what would you suggest?
So we'll start first with Valerie, and then we'll switch each question. So there's a different person starting first.
Sure.
Yeah, I support moving to 100% of renewable energy by 2040. I think that the goals that we're setting right now are not as aggressive as I would like. I think we can all identify that we weren't able to reach 2030. That doesn't mean we can't hold ourselves to a better goal at 2035 or 2040. Wow, that was quick. I'm glad Sexton is nearing its end. We are voting on Monday to write a letter to the mayor of Sykeston, acknowledging their consideration of renewables, solar, and natural gas. I think that by the time Sykeston goes offline, we should be able to reach 65% renewable energy. The challenge that we're having right now is having renewable contracts that we can purchase now. I think it makes a lot of sense to purchase them early before they become more expensive, before it's harder to purchase them. We also need to have choices to purchase them now. I like that we review this every year. We review this before we approve the budget. So we have the ability to stay agile and increase our goals as needed. I think it's important for us to continue to push our energy goals and not just choose something that's going to make itself.
Thank you. And Christina Hartman, Fifth Ward.
Hi. So I do support moving towards a goal of renewable energy. The current goal of 30 by 28 is not sufficient. And I think that as we move forward, we need to look at it like I would look at it from a technology perspective. When we bring old systems down, we look at what was working, what didn't work, and what are the new technologies out there. And we move towards that new technology with the goal of making sure that those systems in place are ready ahead of time and maintainable for the longevity of the system. I support replacing the contracts with renewable ones and have been following it, so I do understand that it is difficult to get those contracts ahead of time, but I think that we should be pressing forward and making sure we do that. I believe the goals should be paired with clear intermittent milestones, so making sure that as we're progressing, not just yearly check-ins, but having clear milestones set along the path towards renewable energy will help us meet the goal in the end. And as we transition, I think that it makes sense to look for resilient systems that will benefit our future generations going forward, and not only just looking in the past, but looking to the future to make those renewable energy goals met.
Thank you. Finished early, 1 second early, like the Olympics. And next is Don Waterman.
Thank you all for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for hosting and sponsoring this event tonight. A couple of things about the Sykeston plant. Yes, they're closing down their coal operation and they're proposing to replace it with a mixture of gas and renewables. I think we can always do and should seek to do better regarding renewables, but I am not in favor of trying to do 100%. Part of the reason is that, one, if you look at the life cycle of the various, whether it's solar or wind, 20 to 25 years, whereas a gas turbine plant, you're looking at 80 to 90 years. So you're looking cost wise. The other thing is if you look, even though we may reach the goal of everything being on a renewable contract, if you look at the interconnectedness of the entire electrical grid that we are part of, we're not an island, then there's no guarantee that that electron coming into your house, running your lights, came from the renewable plant or renewable energy. Talk about battery storage. That sounds interesting, but by the same token, have we looked at the impact of what it takes to mine the materials for those batteries? I know technology is looking at other alternatives besides lithium, but for right now, that's our current state of technology. So, as I said, I think we can always do better, but I think that realistically, I would prefer not to do 100% renewable contracts.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll go on to the next question. And, okay, thanks. And it will be Howard Finster, right? Yes.
Indeed.
And the first question will go to Christina Hartman, running for the 5th ward.
Very good.
Mention that I think we have 2 minutes for this question as opposed for answers, as opposed to 3 the previous.
2 minutes each. Can I be heard? Okay. What energy efficiency programs do you think the city utility should offer for low-income residents, including both renters and homeowners? Do you support implementing a program like Pay As You Save? And would you be willing to provide funding to increase communications and awareness of existing or new energy efficiency programs with utility customers? Thank you all for sharing your thoughts.
Energy efficiency is one of the most effective tools that we have in reducing things like emissions and lowering household costs at the same time. I strongly support programs such as Pay As You Save. These programs help reduce the cost barriers to many that would not otherwise be able to afford retrofitting some of the systems into their households. I also support expanding efficiency programs in rental and multi-family housing, where residents often face high energy bills, but the authority to make those decisions or make those improvements rely on the landlord. And so working with programs to help bridge that gap between being a homeowner or being a renter. From a fiscal standpoint, to me, this is smart policy. It prevents displacement and it ensures the costs are less, more manageable over time. I also support funding outreach and communication. So if people are not aware of the programs, they cannot take advantage of them. So I think that as you look at those energy efficiency programs, we really need to make sure that people are aware and can take advantage of them.
Thank you, Christina Hartman. And now we go to Don Waterman.
I think the city, it currently has, in fact, we just came from, Valerie and I were at a public information gathering where the city was attempting to gather some information. It was more about rentals, but there was, they also had a display and some information about efficiency programs. I myself took advantage of one of the efficiency programs several years ago. Added insulation in the attic, a new higher efficiency furnace and air conditioning unit. So they're out, there are some programs. I know there's some weatherization programs. It is kind of I'll use the term conundrum, that many of the individuals that are struggling most with housing are in older housing units that could benefit the most. The question is, how do we go about, upgrading those homes? The as far as regarding lack of knowledge, that's a challenge. I know the city is working on many areas, not just this, about ways they can outreach to the community. We all get the little newsletter that comes with our utility bill. Not going to ask anybody to raise their hands, but how many of you actually read through it? That's very good, very good. I may not read it in depth, but I usually skim through it. But feature some of the efficiency programs that we currently have on the front cover, on the front page. You know, people, if they look at it at all, they're going to look at least that. Yes, the lack of funds for upfront costs is a challenge. Are there private entities that could help with that? Maybe in grants or something like that. The city is already in a financial situation that's very difficult, and being able to provide more for that is going to be a challenge.
All right, then we go to Valerie Carroll, First Ward.
Yeah, this is touching on one of my favorite subjects, so I'm gonna try to talk fast. We do have a lot of rental efficiency programs. We have insulation and weatherization, we have window and door replacements. We have low flow sprinklers, smart thermostats, water heater pump. We have additional insulation programs for ductwork, crawl space, and walls. And the reason why this is so important to me, and important to the First Ward in particular, we have a lot of aging housing. We have most of the affordable housing in the city, and a lot of it is aging. It's expensive for renters in older houses. Their utility bills are higher, and that makes the cost of housing go up over time. So yes, I support these both for homeowners and renters. One of the problems that we have is that not many of them are available to landlords to do on the properties that they own. I would like to find a way to expand this so that we have programs for landlords to improve their properties. First Ward is majority renter. I would also like to find ways to incentivize property improvement. And then, you know, I really love this pay-as-you-go idea. For a lot of the people that I talk to, the barrier to qualification is paying the upfront cost for the work. Pay-as-you-go would help. I don't think that it will cost the city much more, but it makes the payments spread out, which is better for the person, the homeowner. I had not considered that before, so that's something that I thank you for bringing up, and I will take that forward.
All right, thank you very much. Our next questioner, our question presenter is Melinda Hemmelgarn, and I'll let Kim do the order.
Oh, I think we are starting with Don Waterman, and we do have 3 minutes per response for this one.
Great. Thank you for being here. In 2022, the City Council unanimously approved a motion for the city to implement rental unit energy efficiency minimum standards. Although some actions have been taken, the city has not implemented any minimum standards, nor has the staff proposed any. Do you support implementing minimum energy efficiency standards for existing rental housing in Columbia? And 2, are you willing to support requesting city water and light staff to follow up on this matter and present a proposal to the City Council for implementation? Thanks.
So a couple of things with that. One, would it be water and light, or would it be housing, or a combination of the two? Would be responsible for looking into it. 2, then for those that don't meet the standards for rentals, then depending upon the degree of renovation needed to come up to those standards, if it's going to be extensive, then where do the people go temporarily while their units are being upgraded? I think it's something that, yes, we could take a look at as to how we get there. My questions would be, and I wasn't on council when this was discussed and passed, but just what are the mechanisms to check it, to investigate it? What are the consequences if it's not met? And those would probably be my two primary things that I would want to take a look at.
Thank you. And next, go ahead, Kim. It's
Oh,
this is
Valerie,
yours.
I think.
Okay, we'll have you.
I'm waiting to know when I can start. Yeah, this is a tricky issue, actually. I care quite a bit about conservation of rental units. We have a housing shortage. I also care quite a bit about how expensive it is to rent or own a property in the city, and how that cost gets passed down to renters. I think if we want to do this, we're really going to have to push our energy efficiency programs to landlords first. So we want to tailor that in so that they have those kinds of rebate programs, especially for the smaller landlords, because we do have a lot of small landlords in the first ward. We want to push those programs first, because the last thing you want to do is start this program requiring efficiency that, granted, would help all the renters and we want, and then suddenly have all the landlords take their properties off the rental market or not renew leases. I do not want to look at people out of housing due to one of the choices that I make on city council. So we have to balance that decision and the way that we improve our housing to meet the need. Christine?
I think that we are at a really interesting time. So the housing authority, Boone had released a report saying we needed 37,000 new units. And so I imagine by 2050. And so as we start looking at those future homes, we definitely need to be considering that, because some of those will be rentals. And so we need to look at programs that, one, plan for those new builds, but then coming back to the existing builds, I definitely support minimum energy efficiency standards, but we need to look at that in a phased approach. So we need to look at what is responsible for the environment. So how are we working towards our goals, our environmental goals, but how are we getting those into the homes in a way that is affordable for people, so we're not displacing anybody. And I want to make sure that when we look at those retrofits, that they're long-term sustainable and can also work with their current existing systems, because when we try to retrofit, it is more expensive. And so making sure that we have the plan for the new homes as well as retrofitting for the old homes is going to be very vital.
Thank you. And now for our fourth question, Peter Schneeberger will ask that.
Thank you for being here. There's been some online comments that people need to bring the mics close to them. The Gans Creek Recreation Area includes a highly sensitive ecosystem within its boundaries. Several organizations have proposed designating a nature preserve within the Gans Creek Recreation Area. Would you support this area to be designated as a nature preserve?
And I think we start with Valerie this time.
Yeah, this is unique. I've been on city council a year and a half, almost two, around there. These decisions were voted on while I was on city council, and you've never heard me speak on this. I typically recuse on issues related to Gans Creek because my husband works for Walt's Bike Shop. And I won't be voting on future ones. I do want to say that I would support having a nature preserve of 140 acres within the larger park. And I recognize that the bike trails in the park were a highly controversial decision. I also recognize that they have been able to start conversations within Parks Department and with the public regarding land resource management and conservation. Parks has planted 400 trees. They have a meeting tomorrow with Missouri Department of Conservation to talk about prairie restoration. And they've removed a lot of invasive species. I think those are good things. And I think that we can still have a nature preserve within the park in a way that we can coexist with what's there right now, in a way that we can honor the natural habitats of the wildlife there, and in a way that people can hike and view and participate in wildlife and nature.
Thank you, Valerie Carroll. Then we'll go to Christina Hartman, running again for the Ward City Council.
Thank you. The Gaines Creek area is a highly sensitive ecosystem. It has herons and bat caves and very unique, a very unique ecosystem for Missouri, even historically, because there was a lot of, as Valerie mentioned, prairie lands. And so preserving those different diverse ecosystems really impacts the longevity of our system. But also we can look at it from a situation where we look at carbon sequestration. I'm gonna mess up that word.
Sequestration.
Yeah. And when we think about it, we also think about how it impacts our groundwater too. So as rain falls, we need that absorption to get deep into our land, filling our aquifers and kind of sustaining us over time. I also think that because of the unique and diverse system that we have there, we want to, as Valerie called it, coexist with our habitat. So I would want to, if we did make any type of movement forward, it would need to be a low impact kind of environment. So maybe soft footpaths, and really educating them, again, educating our people for why this preservation would be needed, and making sure that we provide that vital restoration to not only us, because we want to live healthier, but with the other animals and insects and things that share our environment.
Thank you, Christina Hartman. And now we will go to Don Waterman, again, City Council, 5th Ward.
All right, thank you. Frankly and simply, I'm not in favor of making this a nature preserve. Quick look back at the history. Before the city acquired this was a working farm. I'm not sure exactly what, probably livestock, I don't know exactly, but it was a working farm. The heron rookery, the bat caves, they were there and survived it. And I know just mere survival isn't the only criteria, but I doubt very seriously, having grown up on a farm, I doubt very seriously they were mindful of the nesting and migration habits and timings as they were working the farm. So this isn't pristine wilderness. I do think that Parks and Rec, working with the Conservation Department, if the decision to go forward with bike trails is made, that they're going to do everything they can to make it something that is sustainable and fits in with the current environment that's there. Another option, and this is something that I would certainly be willing to consider if it came before council, is private organization raising the funds to purchase that from the city and then they get designated as a nature preserve.
Okay, thank you, Don Waterman. Now, I'll let Kim introduce the next, question, asker.
Question number 5 is Jack Miesenbach. Did I say that right?
Good evening. Yes, close enough. How can Columbia encourage walking and biking and discourage traffic in the city? What role do you see public transit playing in our local transportation mix? Would you support keeping the buses free? Please address these issues.
Yeah, so,
Right. Yes.
Okay.
sorry. So for me, I think transportation definitely, when we're looking at that, we're thinking about the climate, we're thinking about affordability, and we're thinking about access. So if we can provide infrastructure that supports our city in a way that encourages walking or biking, then we are reducing emissions. When we look at the affordability aspect, it is cheaper to ride the bus than to own your own car, right? So there are alternatives to that too. And even in Fifth Ward, you know, it would be nice if some of our residents were able to catch the bus and go to the MU game instead of having to drive there and park in really large parking lots. And then in terms of access, it makes us healthier, right? If we're walking more, we're biking more, and we have the ability to get to where we need to go, whether it be for healthcare or for the grocery store or your job, we're going to be a healthier society in order to sustain that long term. So for me, transportation infrastructure is very key in how we build that long-term vision.
Okay.
Dawn is
Yep.
up next.
I agree, our public transportation system needs some significant attention. We discussed it, but it needs some significant attention. Anybody that is familiar with it knows that it's not even what it used to be. It could be significantly better. And that would definitely cut down on the amount of car traffic. I think part of what we could look at for a solution is more infill, more density, but then also making sure that what people would be going to, grocery or shopping, entertainment, would be within that walking distance as well. Yes, it makes us a little healthier. But by the same token, we have a number of trails already. We have bike lanes on many of our roads for people to take advantage of those. So are we looking to coerce people to utilize those? I don't think that's where we want to go with this. But I think the voluntary compliance and taking advantage of what we currently have, maybe better education, whatever, but I think that's where I cut back on this.
Right. Next we go to Valerie Carroll.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
The research is there. We need sidewalks. First Ward, Central, a lot of people live here who wanted to live close to workplaces, close to shopping, who wanted to be able to use alternative transportation. A lot of people live here who don't have access to their own vehicles. US Census data shows us that people who walk to work are more likely to be lower income people. We tend to take that for granted because we are proud of our walking, and we tend to look at it as a hobby. But for most of our citizens, it's not. Central neighborhoods, older neighborhoods were built before we had easements, before we required sidewalks. Our sidewalk infrastructure is severely lacking. It's very difficult to get around. If you have mobility impairments, all of us at some point in our life will be disabled. That And we need to build for the future for every person. There will be a day when we each wish that we had a sidewalk or wider sidewalks. We cannot have people walking in the roads. Similarly, our roads are carrying more traffic. I would like to see us finish projects from the sidewalk master plan and invest in doing so. I would like to see us finish more traffic calming projects, and use, some more variety of techniques for traffic calming. I would like to see us use curb extensions. I would like to see us use pedestrian refuge islands and chicanes. Speed bump is not a one size fits all. Bus fares should be free. They should be free for the foreseeable future. It would cost us more money to install the equipment to gather a fare than it would save us money. We will not be able to run our bus system on fares. In fact, that's not how any of our major cities do it. These are usually subsidized by the state and the city. One of our problems is that we don't get a lot of state subsidy for it. Our other problem is that we don't have a lot of drivers. It's hard to recruit and keep drivers. So we're gonna need to work on those things.
Okay, thank you. Question number 6 comes from me. Once again, this is the City Council Candidates Forum focusing on energy. And we have current 5th Ward Councilman Don Waterman. We have Christina Hartman, who is running for 5th Ward. And then we also have Valerie Carroll, who is 1st Ward Councilperson. Question number 6. What major climate change related or environmental protection infrastructure projects would you like to see undertaken in Columbia in the next 5 years? And I think this one we're starting with Dawn. Does that sound right?
I think so. Climate change or infrastructure?
2 minutes and 3 minutes.
I think it's 2 minutes for this one.
Okay.
Says 2 minutes.
And the two topics are climate change and infrastructure and climate infrastructure.
Climate change related or environmental protection infrastructure.
I think that we currently have, I know our Office of Sustainability and some of our other programs that are encouraging people to become more efficient, become more aware. We had talked earlier about increasing efficiency for homes, rental units. I think those are probably and working on increasing the efficiency of existing homes, probably one of the things that we could be more quickly addressed. Again, the question comes down to the cost, who's going to upfront the cost, and how do we go about it? And so that's that's all I've got on that one.
I think we go to Valerie Carroll next.
Yeah, my top items, at least immediately, are going to be stormwater mitigation, and sewer overflow prevention. These are affecting, constituents that I hear from frequently. The city has been diligent with their cure in place, pipe program, PCCE. Can't remember what it stands for, I apologize. And that's to eliminate stormwater from infiltrating into our sewer lines and causing backflows. They used to be commonplace in the 1st Ward. We're fighting it, we're pushing back. It's already being done. I want to push harder on that. We can watch the map as they fill in different areas. And they're getting there. They're getting to all of your neighborhoods. You can check and verify. And the same thing with stormwater. There are a lot of streets in First Ward that still don't have curb and gutter. And so a lot of those places are getting quite a bit of overflow and quite a bit of erosion. That affects the people who live there, that affects their basements. So adding curb and gutter in streets that don't have them yet, I think is important. I have a real, I guess in my larger goals and my longer term goals, I have a real concern about how we treat floodplain and how we treat building in or near floodplain. I would like to pay attention to what the 1% flood map is, revisit that and make sure it's accurate, and update our building codes for floodplain so that we're matching current EPA recommendations.
Did we hear from everyone on that,
Christina?
Christina?
Hi. So, for me, I think I would support a couple different things. One being the urban heat, island, mitigation. Not only because it's, good for us, but there are some clear things like it reduces, it can slow traffic when we introduce bigger trees or have better canopy. So reducing the heat overall, slowing traffic, increasing people's activity outside, wanting to be a little bit healthier. The other area that I wanted to talk about was the floodplain restoration. When we think about that, we think about it from an environmental standpoint. So we're talking, it helps improves environmental health, but also prevents erosion into our streams and creeks. And it lowers costs associated with rebuilding homes and structures. So making sure we really support that floodplain. And when you think about it, we have several insurance companies in our city too. So I think it makes good business sense, because if they're having to pay out for things like floodplains, then that's higher premiums, right? And not necessarily good business for them. The other thing that I would think about is that when we don't really understand those floodplains, we are potentially putting people at risk and possibly displacing people out of their homes when those things are, when floods do occur in those areas. So we want to reduce financial strain. We also want to make our city grow. So for me, it would be the urban heat mitigation and floodplain restoration.
Thank you, Christina Hartman. And now we'll go to the last of the given questions. And then I think we're going to have time for some questions from the audience. And when we go to that, we'll restrict the answers to a minute each. So the last question I will be asking, and I think we'll start with Christina or Valerie. Okay. And it's planning for the future is critical. Homes and buildings constructed in 2026 will still be around and functional in 2050. Will you support adding, and then I'm going to change it a little bit so everyone can understand it, electrical ready new houses and commercial for residential and commercial buildings for the future? And I might also just mention, we were given to the candidates the information that the cost right now is $600 to $2,500, depending on the size and number of circuits. But in the future, if they have to retro the house, it's $4,000 to $10,000. So we'll start with Valerie, First Ward.
Yeah, I think this this touches on a lot of things that we've already talked about, the cost of ownership over time. I think that it's important that we're building things that last and that remain affordable for longevity. I want to say, and I'm not sure how this fits in with the IBC, International Building Codes, and Property Maintenance Codes. We're in the process of updating and accepting new codes, and energy codes were part of that. We have a public input out on that right now. So if that's something you want to put input on, please go provide your input. I do support having energy requirements within those goals. One of the things that's useful about that new code is that it has both prescriptive requirements that granted are more stringent than previously. And it has, I forget what they called it, but a more flexible kind of choose your own adventure path for compliance that allows builders to have more control in how they approach, in what things that they use to build and maintain compliance. I think that helps approach some of the concern that there was about impacts to affordability. I do support building electrical ready. I think that is the way a lot of our utilities are headed in the future. It seems like that's smart for builders as well, and that's the way that we will likely head.
Thank you, Valerie. Carol, now we'll go to Christina Hartman, Ward 5th candidate.
Thank you. I do support adopting energy efficient electricity codes. I do think it makes sense when we're talking about retrofitting, costing nearly $4,000 to $10,000 as opposed to $600 to $2,500. It makes fiscal sense. I think that when we're talking about that 37,000 new homes by 2050, I think we have a very clear opportunity there to make those newer homes efficient and working toward reducing that long-term cost. I think if we can avoid expensive retrofits, we're going to be better off long-term. So one of the things we talked about, or that we heard last night, was that the transmission lines, they're coming in and putting them in after the fact, and that's going to cost money. And we're looking at, we just had a 2% increase in our energy rate. And so once we have to go back and retrofit that project that was delayed 13 years, we're now going to have to go back and see another energy rate. So to me, it makes sense. Do the cost up front. Yes, it's a little bit more expensive. Provide mechanisms for people to be able to afford that, whether it be right now where somebody can afford it full out, or providing incentives over time to help them put that cost in right away.
Thank you, Christina Hartman. Then we go to Don Waterman.
I think the idea, I understand, for the organization and individuals that are here tonight, moving to an all electrical infrastructure is kind of the goal, the ideal. Personally, I think that's unwise. That's kind of like putting simply all your eggs in one basket. If you have any kind of a retirement portfolio, it's a portfolio, it's more than one. You don't put everything into one company. Same thing with this. I had the opportunity to attend National League of Cities 2024, go to a presentation talking about housing and cost of housing, and energy associated with that. Two individuals that were on the dais that spoke, one was the former mayor of Philadelphia. The city started a program to build affordable housing. They went with gas heat. I asked him afterwards why gas. He said simply because it was cheaper. The other one was a councilwoman from Houston, Texas. And if you remember, Houston and that area had a huge ice storm a few years ago. They were without power for a long time. several days. And she said the only reason they were able to stay in their house was because of a gas fireplace that they were able to utilize. So, and all electric infrastructure, I think, could put us at risk. The energy codes, I was at one of the public hearings recently. And the main thing that struck me, people that are in the industry that are actually doing the building, they're talking about raising costs, both commercially and residentially. It's kind of, it seems counterintuitive to talk about how do we build affordable housing when we're going to make it more expensive to build.
Right, thank you. Don Waterman. Now, I think we have enough time for about 3 questions from the audience. So if someone has a question, if you can come up to the table here and speak into the mic, then you'll be heard and seen. And again, there'll be a minute for a response. And we'll start with probably Don Waterman on this question, this first one. That same one. I've lost track by now. Or Christina.
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Well, this is.
I'll go first. I'll go first.
Yeah. And hold the mic right up to your.
Is this the mic?
Yeah, it's.
We're trying
Okay.
to get 1 minute.
I have 1 second. Okay. I see that I looked up on AI, a lot of voluntary compliance encouragement to landlords. But when I was involved in energy stuff for the city, we proposed that the inspections, which are not very often for rentals, tie energy efficiency to the rental inspections. And I want to know where we're at with that, because I know people don't like mandatory, but voluntary compliance only gets so far in older rentals. Thank you.
Regarding inspections, in fact, as I mentioned earlier, the forum we were at, one of the questions was about the fact we're currently at a 5-year cycle for rental inspections. And sufficient, insufficient, do we want to do more, do less? That was kind of the general question that they were gathering input from the public. Regarding adding the energy component, energy efficiency to that, again, you kind of run into an issue. How would that then, what do you set? I'm sure the measurement means you're there, but how do you set it? And then how do you enforce it? If they don't pass, if they haven't made the upgrades, if they're not as efficient as they meet the standard, do we close the building?
And next we'll go to Christina. Why don't we just?
Okay, we'll come back to Yeah, so I'm not as familiar with this particular issue, but I think that what I would do is I would look into it, look at what you said about the 5-year turnover. That's a very long time. I do know a lot of the housing in Columbia. I've talked with people that have been MU students, and their housing is not sustainable. And so that 5-year inspection is not realistic. But in terms of how do we encourage people to be compliant, or do we mandate that? When we look at that from like a technology standpoint, so like when I would go do security audits for systems, I would look at what is the rule, the regulation, what are they doing, and what are they, what are the mitigating things that maybe are happening with that. So maybe they're lower, they have lower energy. Oh, I have to stop. That went really fast.
And then next we'll go to Valerie Carroll.
Yeah, I feel like this is pretty closely tied to the earlier question about rental unit efficiencies, minimum standards, and applying those to existing housing. I don't know where we're at since 2022. I don't know if that has come back to us or not, or at what stage it got hung up. I think my answer here is very similar to before, in that I really don't want to lose rental units or disrupt housing availability. And so before we implement something like that, we're going to need to have our programs for improvement of rental units, for energy and installing energy efficiency. We're going to need to have those more available. We're going to need to make them available to landlords to prevent suddenly losing units.
Thank you. We have another question.
Sorry, I'm a little off center today and I just doing the best I can, but I do have some really pressing concerns. The word urgency is something that's not heard very much. And when it comes to the climate crisis, it's what we need to be thinking about and dealing with and addressing. Beginning of this decade, it was determined by the scientific community that there's an international body that brings together the biggest experts in all of these countries. They determined that we had to cut our emissions by half this decade if we had any hopes of reaching the 1.5 degrees Celsius target, without which we end up with incredibly destructive situations that need to be addressed. My question for you, I'm not here to make a speech, but rather to ask a question. My question for you is, do you see a need for urgency in addressing the climate crisis? Do you even recognize that we are in a climate crisis? But more importantly, how would you, if you recognize this situation, how would you go about alerting our fellow citizens of Columbia who seem to have very little concern about energy waste and energy consumption? How would you build a can-do mentality to meet goals that are aggressive, meet goals that actually will reduce dramatically our release of greenhouse gases? Thank you.
Valerie Carroll first.
Yeah, I think that we could benefit from some urgency in everything that we do. Municipal government moves very, very slowly. That's the nature of what we're doing. We want to make sure we're vetting our ideas and we're hearing from the public. We want to make sure we're educating the public. And there's a balance to be achieved there. When it comes to energy efficiency, sometimes I feel like it gets lost in a sea of other urgent matters. We need to make sure that we're keeping that at the forefront of our mind and that we're revisiting our goals. It feels like everything's urgent right now.
And next we'll go to Christina Hartman.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about urgency, I definitely agree that there needs to be some urgency in how we're preserving our environment. When we think about the system and how government works, we need to think about it from the planning policy and what are those tools that we have in our toolbox that can help us do that. So do we need to enact stronger policy? Do we need to be better at planning? Is it the implementation that's failing? And for me, when we look at a lot of these delayed projects that we currently have on the Fifth Ward, we're also, that is impacting our infrastructure, that's impacting our longevity. And so when we want to, we need to really focus on that aspect of not only planning and not only doing the reports, but actually doing the work and making it mandatory that we are moving forward with those goals.
Thank you. And now Don Waterman.
As I said before, I believe we can definitely do better. Man is, just by our very existence, is destructive to our environment. So we can certainly be mindful and be more aware, and we can be good stewards. There's not, certainly believe in that. you know, I think a lot of it has to do with, individuals. You talk about building a sense of urgency. I know you've been promoting your message, putting your message out. Is apparently it's, if you do not see that Columbia as a whole is responding with the same degree of urgency, then maybe I don't know. I can't answer why. That's something that, would be something that, again, look at the messaging. Again, I'm reminded of former Vice President Gore's hockey stick model, that according to that, we should all be about medium well about now, and that wasn't accurate.
Hey, we have one more question.
One more question. Well, it's actually, I want to plant a seed because this topic touches on fossil fuel connections, climate, and environment, and it has to do with pesticide use, lawn chemical use. And Columbia has an opportunity to participate in a program that is put forth by Beyond Pesticides, which is a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. I am a member of the board, so I am biased. But they have a free program that will help the city transition two parks, two public green spaces to sustainable management. In other words, management without chemicals. The other part of this, and I'd love to know what you think about embracing that opportunity and helping to move the parks director to participating in that program. The other issue is the use of lawn chemicals just in public spaces where children play or where they can drift on school property, even in neighborhoods. We love to say we're a walkable community, but if you've ever tried to walk in a community where a lawn's recently been sprayed, it's toxic. And there's a great book here at the library about Parkinson's disease, for example, related to exposure to pesticides. Anyway, the city does have an odor ordinance, but the city's odor ordinance does not include the stench from lawn chemicals. So, two-part question. One, would you take a look at the Sustainable Parks program available through Beyond Pesticides? And two, would you be willing to expanding the odor ordinance to include the offensive odors of lawn chemicals that keep people, frankly, from enjoying their property? Thank you.
Start with Christina.
Yeah, so I haven't heard of that program, but that is very interesting. And I would want to look at that for a couple of reasons. One, I don't use pesticides in my yard or my gardens, and I use other natural ways of avoiding the pest. But I would also be interested in it from a cost efficiency. So one of the things that are happening is our budget, we're running a budget deficit. So if there's programs out there that could help us minimize the cost and reduce emissions, because if you're talking about what I think you're talking about, maybe we're not mowing as often, we don't have as many maintenance workers out there, so the upfront costs might be a little bit of something. I'm not sure. I'd have to really look into that program, but it does sound very promising.
Thank you, Christina Hartman. Now we'll go to Don Waterman.
It sounds like it sounds interesting, so yeah, I think it should at least be discussed. I think, yes, we are very heavily reliant on chemicals for everything from pesticides to herbicides, fertilizer, to our gardens and lawns. And yes, we can do things to better that. There are a number of more natural products that are available. So again, I think it's certainly worth the discussion. Regarding extending the odor ordinance, frankly, there's probably some people that find natural compost offensive, because there is a bit of an odor to it, and depending upon how if you into making your own, some of the ingredients could be a little odoriferous. So, but that would be all natural.
Yeah, I've never heard of this program. I'm open to learning more. I've volunteered for a number of invasive removal, honeysuckle removal, with Parks Department. And I know that they give us a chemical, we chop them and they give us a chemical to paint, like paint onto the stem, so we're not spraying, but being selective with how we paint it. I also, in my own yard, I maintain a native garden. And when I purchased it, I had to get rid of a bunch of honeysuckle. I didn't want to use pesticides. I ripped them out with a hook thing. It was very hard. And so, you know, I think we need to learn how to do that, how to equip mostly volunteers to use these new techniques. As far as odor ordinances, I don't see the harm in it in addressing that ordinance. I think that it's not the odor that I'm worried about. And I want to make sure that we're intentional in how we approach things.
Thank you. I want to thank the audience for coming. I want to thank each of the council candidates, Valerie Carroll, Christina Hartman, and Don Waterman for coming tonight. I also want to mention that Renew Missouri and PeaceWorks do not endorse candidates for office, but they do share information regarding candidates' positions with their members. And then Sierra Club does endorse candidates at least some of the time, but they have not as yet made an endorsement. I don't know if they will or not. And with that, and I want to thank Kim Dill for being a co-moderator. Do you want to
Thank you, Barbara.
And thanks to the questioners for asking the questions. So,
Stick around for some food and conversation.
yes,
Right, there's snacks back there. We appreciate the audience coming and being thoughtful and listening to what our candidates have to say.
thank you. for
Thank you.
coming.
I miss
How are you
that.
doing?
And I'm gonna give them a-
Thanks.